Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Good morning, everyone. Good
morning.
Evening, good afternoon, whatever time it may be for you, be here now. Or now.
Okay.
We're reading from the Bhagavatam, and where are we? Did I mark the place last time? Yes, I did.
Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 17.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 17. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in this way Maharaj Prithu, the conqueror of the entire world, accepted the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on his head. Purport. One should accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by bowing down at the lotus feet of the Lord. This means that anything spoken by the Personality of Godhead should be taken as it is, with great care and attention and with great respect. It is not our business to amend the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or make additions or alterations, as it has become a custom for so many scholars and swamis who comment on the words of Bhagavad Gita. Here, the practical example of how to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is shown by Prithu Maharaj. This is the way to receive knowledge through the parampara system. So, Prabhupada saying that we should just accept the words and not make any of our own purports.
No speculation.
Which is opposite to the material world, where everyone is a philosopher or scholar or critic, because that's how you show your intelligence. You see, you have to have an opinion, and that opinion has to be somehow trumping the other opinions. So this goes against that whole mood, which is, these are the words of God, just follow them. But like Prabhupada says, there's so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita because people just can't do that, and they'll even comment on everything, even the words of God. It's like, but he's already spoken, find your own words.
Well, yeah.
No, speak your own Gita. Don't speak his Gita. This is, like Prabhupada.
Well, they're not. That's the point. They're taking his words and contorting them to be their words.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That Prabhupada says that in the Gita, there was one scholar saying that when Krishna says, surrender unto me, he doesn't mean me, the person. He means me, the
unborn, ever existing within.
And, Prabhupada, what are you talking about? What are
you doing, man? I'd like to hear Prabhupada say that. What are you doing, man?
Anyway, I just thought it's interesting, because that's how you show your intellectual prowess in the material world. You have to have some slant on something, And that shows, isn't it, when you're preaching and when new people are in class or this. It's interesting, you can always tell those ones, because then they'll say something and it's like, oh, you're just saying it it's like it's something so annoying and obvious, but they got to say it because they're fresh out of this mentality, and it's like, I got to show. I don't know who you are, but I got to show that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Prabhupada gives the example of, and he uses the term Muni, and he says the Munis, that's what the Munis do, not like the
group,
quote-unquote cult Munis, but the group of people who are Munis, who are, they're searching after transcendental knowledge and wisdom, but he said one will come and say, oh, I have this philosophy, and someone else will say, no, but it's like this, and no, and then they just debate back and forth. Now, there is a statement at the beginning of, I believe, the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the three modes of material nature, where Srila Prabhupada says one must philosophically speculate on these matters in order to try to understand them, something to that effect. You read 17, right? Text 18. Okay, looks interesting. Got lots of notes here. As King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and fell down before King Prithu to touch his lotus feet. But Prithu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for his having stolen the horse meant for the sacrifice. This is such a powerful and important part of the pastime. And this is the part that everybody hopes for and wants to see happen. Of course, some people may be a little bit more eager for violence or justice, and they may want to see Indra, they may have wished he had been burned in the fire when the Brahmins were threatening to do that, or killed by Prithu's son. But no, here what we have is a manifestation of the change of heart. Here we see Indra has repented, and not just because he has to, and not, just because he's been told to, but because he understands what a fool I was to act like that. And it says he became ashamed of his own activities, and he fell down before Prithu Maharaj. Then you have Prithu Maharaj not wanting Indra to bow down to him, and grabbing him and embracing him, and basically giving up all the envy that he still had in his own heart. Because remember, Vishnu had to show up with Indra because he previously it had been requested of Prithu Maharaj to let go and just, let God, but just let go. Don't worry about Indra, and don't worry about these sacrifices. Be happy with 99, forgive Indra. And he said, okay. But he wasn't okay. He hadn't really forgiven Indra, and he was still harboring what is referred to as envy in his heart. And one might say, now where is that envy coming? What is envy in this situation? But that envy is the fact that he, as we've discussed before, he may be thinking, how come Indra gets to get away with this? And that's envy. How come Vishnu, Krishna, is protecting him and I had to stop my sacrifices? How come he gets to have 100, but I have to stop it? All of that means envy. I envy his position. I am envious of what he has. So he hadn't given that up, but here he gives it up. But how did Vishnu go about manifesting it? It wasn't by chastising Indra. It was by loving Indra, by supporting Indra, by appreciating Indra, and by making a request of Prithu Maharaj, who was in a different disposition, speaking to Prithu Maharaj to encourage him to let go and set the example. And when he let go and set the example, and then of course now Vishnu is just given a whole lecture, as you've mentioned a couple of times, to Prithu Maharaj, which you might think, why the heck is he standing here lecturing Prithu Maharaj? He should take Indra aside and give him a good psh, psh. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. And this reminds me of what it is Prabhupada said, and you shared a few times that it used to happen in your home, that your mom would kind of chastise you to teach the sister-in-law. The mother will, and Prabhupada says, the mother will chastise the daughter in front of the daughter-in-law in order to teach the daughter-in-law, but not to correct her directly. Anyway, let's see what Prabhupada has to say. And I'm sorry, yes, I just gave my own purport before reading Prabhupada's purport, and I know my wife is going to chastise me. She's shaking her head like, this man can talk for America and England, and that's good. I'm talking about Krishna. Purport. Would you like to read it? Because I just
No, thank you.
There are many cases in which a person becomes an offender to the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Yes, many cases. And later becomes repentant. Here also we find that although the king of heaven, Indra, was so powerful that he accompanied Lord Vishnu, he felt himself a great offender for stealing Prithu Maharaj's horse that was meant for sacrifice. An offender at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is never excused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whew. There are many instances illustrating this fact. Ambarish Maharaj was offended by Durvasa Muni, a great sage and mystic yogi, and Durvas had to fall down at the lotus feet of Ambarish Maharaj. Yeah, so there you go. And having said that, it's interesting that it seemed that even though Indra had offended Prithu, which is being alluded to here, that it's not that Krishna had not forgiven him. Rather, it seemed that he had forgiven him. But sometimes I guess that can look different in different circumstances.
Next paragraph. Indra decided to fall down at the lotus feet of King Prithu, but the king was so magnanimous a Vaishnav that he did not want Maharaj Indra to fall down at his feet. Instead, King Prithu immediately picked him up and embraced him, and both of them forgot all the past incidents. That was good. Both King Indra and Maharaj Prithu were envious and angry with each other. But since both of them were Vaishnavas or servants of Lord Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. This is also a first-class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. In the present days, however, because people are not Vaishnavas, they fight perpetually among one another and are vanquished without finishing the mission of human life. There is a great need to propagate the Krishna consciousness movement in the world, so that even though people sometimes become angry and malicious toward one another because of their being Krishna conscious, such rivalry, competition and envy can be adjusted without difficulty. Key word, adjusted. Prabhupada uses it twice. It was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy, and then at the end, adjusted without difficulty. This is a key point that we have to learn. It's not easy, but to adjust. It's interesting though, it's not easy because sometimes people act like, well, they act silly. Let's just say that. And then it's interesting because then sometimes if they, on that part, like if someone does something, if you're lucky, you don't have to associate with them. The worst is if someone's being silly and then you have to still associate with them because they're in your group of friends or service or family. Or, it's different, and then you're in a different... Anyway, if you don't need to associate. But here the key word is adjust, because if you haven't, because you don't have to associate with someone, and because they've been a bit silly, you may have forgotten or whatever, but if you haven't adjusted within yourself, then you're not going to, when you see them, you aren't going to be able to associate with them.
Yeah.
Because you got to adjust yourself.
I think she's talking to me.
I'm not talking to you. Because you're here, isn't it?
Talk to the hand.
But that's the point that we have to understand. This adjustment. It's not about, well, they better adjust, because a lot of times people are oblivious to what they've said or done.
Yeah.
And they're not going to adjust. And that's life. They may never adjust. So it's for us, It's like if you're driving, someone gets on your nerves and you're like, and they're coming onto your lane and you're like, what are you doing? And if you have to adjust the gears and the speed to either back off and let them in or go to another sideways, go to another lane. And if we get stubborn and say, no, I'm in this lane, then you're both dead, because the other one's a wally and you're going to be like, so that's the point. Life isn't fair, and sometimes you just need to move out the way, sideways, backwards, forward, to because someone's coming in your lane, but you keep going forward. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
For now.
I'll buy that for $1. Okay, well, I think enough has been said.
We're going to adjust ourselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a whole, philosophy, practice. How do we adjust ourselves?
Yeah.
And I was just reading in Mahatma Prabhu's book about Bhakti, steps of Bhakti. I can't remember, the path of Bhakti, something like that. Anyway, really, really nice book, very, very positively instructive. But a whole section in there about forgiveness, and it's forgiveness is not an easy thing. And here you see that Prabhupada says they both forgot about everything. Of course, forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean forgetting. And I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
They say that you can, you can forgive someone, but you should never forget. Now that's a saying, and it doesn't mean that, I still harbor it. It just means that I understand that this person may be inclined to act a certain way at a certain time, and we've both understood, but it doesn't mean always that someone is going to change either. Because change, adjusting ourselves, is equivalent to having a serious transformation. Although they're having a serious transformation now, but we see that later, and whether it's the same Indra or a different Indra, but Indra seems to get himself into perpetual pickles, and I don't mean dill pickles, but into perpetual pickles where he, acts out from a place of serious pride, even to the point of
messing with Krishna.
Yeah, directly with Krishna and trying to kill all the residents of Vrindavan, so because he wasn't getting his worship. So it doesn't always mean someone's going to change. So forgiveness, but letting go of what you're blaming someone for can be very powerful. It's liberating for us, and it's liberating for them. So anyway, I encourage reading that. Anyway, please share your thoughts and your comments here, and we really would like to hear from you. And anything else you'd like to say?
No.
All right. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Gaur Nitai ki.
Jai.
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki.
Jai.
Jai Shishi Radha Landanishwara Radha Gokulananda Radha Murlidhar ki.
Jai.
Nitai Ko Premanande.
Hare Krishna.